welcome to Episode 6 of March to the Sea, the Vandals Let's Play campaign for Total War Attila. On the previous episode of March to the Sea, Godegisel and the Oath continued moving west across Iberia, initially capturing the province capital of Lusitania, Emerita Augusta, where he installed a Vandal noble named Liuva as the province governor. Capturing this settlement coincidentally completed the municipal construction quest to obtain a communal grounds building, as Emerita Augusta contained a recently constructed Roman statue, which we were able to demolish for its raw materials and wealth. We already had a fairly large group of military allies, although we strengthened ties with some of the factions, particularly the Geats, who control a powerful military, and Godegisel was able to broker several small trade agreements with powers in northern Europe. Legio 30, the large Roman legion commanded by Flavius Euticianus, abandoned the settlement of Malika to Visimar and the Children of the Forest, who dispatched the garrison forces and occupied the settlement. However, the capture of Malika seemed to only bring sorrow to our people, as Genseric received a crippling injury during the battle which forced him to resign as Visimar's retainer. Moreover, Visimar discovered that Legio 30 had fled the settlement due to a smallpox outbreak. Fortunately, Visimar was able to pull his army out of the settlement without the disease spreading among his men, although he ruthlessly quarantined any soldier who was in contact with the infected, including a brash young soldier named Athanaric. Genseric was struck by an idea while recovering from his injury at Carthago Nova. He was inspired by the sails of Legio 30 transports which were visible on the horizon, and became determined to build his own fleet. Although his crippled leg rendered him unable to march or ride a horse, he was confident he could command from the deck of a ship, so he commissioned our first navy, the Lartian Praus, with the help of his adopted brother Gislic and half-brother Gunderic. With his years of training with the legendary Visimar, Genseric is clearly ready to take the helm. Godegisel and the intrepid men of the Oath continue like a juggernaut to the western coast of Iberia, taking Olispo and basking in the triumph as the cool waters of the Atlantic lap at their feet. Meanwhile, Visimar takes Hispalis right out from under Legio 13 in a daring nighttime assault, demonstrating once again that he remains as shrewd as ever when it comes to matters of war, in spite of his advanced age. Friedewald moved across the Strait of Gibraltar to scout the northern African coast, finding that most of the Roman settlements, with the exception of Carthage, had been retaken by the North African tribes. Although we were hardly resisted in our advance by the Romans, the Vandals' gains in Iberia came at a price. Public order in several settlements was at an all-time low, and I resorted to bringing in several armies to institute martial law. In the end, a tax holiday and the charismatic orations of our Arian priestess Scarillo prevented outright revolt. The Western Roman Empire have not forgotten about us, and apparently took note of Godegisel's achievement as well, as Legio 30 and Legio 13 closed in on Olispo with their small naval escort. Visimar and the Children of the Forest moved up the coast to reinforce Godegisel and the Oath, while Genseric and the Lartian Praus took the initiative to slip past the Roman line of ships to the port of Olispo. With the standoff rapidly escalating in western Lusitania, a military engagement appears imminent. We step back into Godegisel's shoes, or sandals as the case may be, in the spring of 406 AD, and it's not a particularly enviable position. We have one large Roman legion, one moderate-sized Roman legion, and a small Roman navy who have assembled just off the coast of Olispo, where Godegisel and Visimar have barricaded themselves. Genseric has bravely, or perhaps foolishly, sailed past the Roman forces and docked at the port. My opportunities for action are all but spent this turn, and the only thing I have left to do is begin tearing down the Roman infrastructure at Hispalis. It's now time to end the turn and see if the Roman fleet is prepared to act. The Roman legion transport ships do not assault Olispo, but they do not retreat either. However, the small accompanying navy moves northward, perhaps drawn away by the Hispania siege of Brigantium. A smaller group of transports moves towards Carthago Nova, but I'm unconcerned given our strong garrison forces there. A small Marian navy moves in to take control of the Strait of Gibraltar. I'm not too thrilled about this, but I have to concentrate on Rome right now. The Langobard separatists, having destroyed the Langobard loyalists, ask for a peace treaty and offer us a reasonable sum of money, so I accept their offer. Although Gaul remains our ally after we liberated them from their Roman overlords, I entered this war purely for appearances, and I think Gaul with their 3 provinces should be able to take care of themselves at this point. Several women of the tribe have managed to successfully carry out political actions to secure the devotion of those men whose loyalty had waned. In unrelated news, Godegisel has acquired the Flaccid trait. Godegisel now discovers that Genseric has sailed into Aleppo, and he is not pleased.
My son, you fool! Now the Romans will surely attack with both the king and his heir in the same city. My mind flies from apprehension to fury. Gunderic does not have the stomach for this work, but now I fear you do not have the brain for it.
You have always strained your temperament between these 2 extremes, father. The physicians always said you had an excess of the yellow bile. The wine you've imbibed over the years with Visimar has brought on this dyscrasia. Galswintha has also told me—
Silence! Galswintha has become frigid, and I will not speak of it with you. Visimar will fight tooth and nail to claw his way out of the province, but even he will be crushed by overwhelming odds. We must do something, but we cannot fight the Romans until they land.
Perhaps we should strike first. I can take all of my ships and all of my men. Although we're outnumbered, I'll sink as many of their vessels as I can before we're overcome. If only I had more ships.
Take Visimar with you.
Visimar cannot even swim, and is frightened of the water.
Please do not say this to him. There are several merchant ships in the port that we can outfit for war. The ships will be of unsuitable quality, and they will be captained by men who know little of sailing, but perhaps they can do something to aid you.
Yes, of course. We can make our navy appear to have greater strength in numbers. I can use this to drive the Romans back from the coast into the greater ocean. They fear the sea, father, and I'll make their great fear a reality.
Then do what you can. If we die here, know that our people will be led by Gunderic, and he will not be able to stand against Rome by himself. All our hopes rest with this gamble. Perhaps Radagaisus will lend you his dice. I'm told they're unusually lucky.
I will hang Radagaisus' dice from the foremast. With his father's reluctant assent, Genseric takes the helm of his flagship and moves into the waters off the coast of Iberia. Visimar and the Children of the Forest board whatever ships they can scrounge from the port and move along with the Larchen prows to support Genseric. Genseric is able to drive the Roman forces apart, as Legio 30 and Legio 13 withdraw in opposite directions, to the deep waters to the north and south of Aleppo. Visimar is unwilling to take the Children of the Forest into deeper water, suspecting his scavenged craft of not being particularly worthy maritime vessels. Genseric strikes a deal with a local mercenary commander for 3 additional ships, and then takes off in pursuit of Vettius Tranquilius and Legio 13. He catches up with them, and we see that Genseric has an overwhelming advantage in these waters. But both Genseric and I need the practice of commanding a navy, so I decide to fight the battle manually. I put a group of archer ships on either side of our battle line, and the center is held by Marines in their longships. I send the assault Liburnian around the enemy's flank to see if I can sink Vettius Tranquilius' transport. Ultimately, I get a little distracted trying to direct all of my Marines to the right spot, and it looks like my assault ship got pinned between Vettius Tranquilius and a unit of spears. I direct the artillery ships to fire on the enemy general and start moving in some Marines and archers to support the assault ship. The boarding actions against the enemy ships are not going that well, but the archers are managing to sink enemy ships by setting them on fire. Better still, it looks like the artillery ships have managed to set Vettius Tranquilius' ship on fire, and one of the 2 masts is already engulfed with flames. Although a couple of units of our Marines lost their resolve, it only takes the sight of Vettius Tranquilius disappearing into the cold waters of the Atlantic for the remainder of the enemy to surrender to Genseric's forces. 2 units of spear infantry managed to escape at the end of the battle, but Legio 13 is all but destroyed. The Larchan prows still have enough movement reserve to catch up with the larger Legio 30 and Flavius Eutychianus. The balance bar this time is even more overwhelmingly in my favor, so I decide to auto-resolve. The result is complete destruction of Legio 30, with the entire Roman legion destroyed. However, we can see that in spite of the heroic victory description, I lost over 300 men, essentially a third of my force in the auto-resolve, so I think the balance bar may not have been that kind to me after all. In both naval victories, the Romans who were not killed or cast overboard were ransomed back to the Western Roman Empire, netting us over 1,100 as a result. The Larchan prows have earned their first naval tradition. I choose Master Shipwrights and Naval Expedition, which provide bonuses to hull strength, recruitment cost reduction, and integrity while in shared or controlled waters. This also gets us closer to Seafaring Traditions, which has a handy upkeep cost reduction and replenishment bonus. Genseric consolidates his force, merging the depleted units, scavenging and scuttling the craft which are too damaged to make the journey back to port. Even after this incredible seafaring expedition, Genseric is still able to get his men back to port before the end of the summer with some extra work and a favorable wind, using the double-timed stance.
Your orders?
Relieved to be off his rickety transport craft and back on dry land, Bizamar moves up the coast to Bracara, putting the settlement under siege. The Romans have left this fairly valuable settlement essentially undefended, and Bizamar eagerly destroys the small garrison. Bracara has the gold resource, which should produce quite a bit of income, even with a low-tier mine in place. With the relatively minimal destruction from the siege, the settlement buildings are repaired for a modest cost. Hunilla has ranked up to level 3 and improves her Lore Master ability, which, like Vizamar's Sage ability, gives the faction-wide research bonus. Friedebald moves past Dimity, skirting the edge of the Sahara Desert on his way toward Carthage. With our accumulated wealth, I start converting another settlement building to a torp, this time at Toledum. Even though I haven't finished researching standardized equipment, I go ahead and switch over to Manor Land so we can get the civil research bonus from the Civil Development's mission. I wouldn't have enough time to complete the objective if I wait to finish standardized equipment. Gunderic gains another rank, improving his stag and judge skills that will help his province management at Terrico. Legio 10 makes landfall on the eastern coast of Iberia, south of Segobriga, but otherwise the Romans move away from our territory. The Mauryan navy also move out of the Strait of Gibraltar, sailing all the way back to their port at Tumusiga. With Gunderic attempting to reach the station of Tribal Chief, again his attempts are complicated by our rival. Godegisel once again refuses to intercede on his son's behalf, and Gunderic must make his own way. We also find in the fall of 406 AD that Macedonia have gotten dragged into our long-distance war with the Venetians. It's a bit strange since they aren't Venetian allies, but I suppose they must have given something in return for their nominal participation. With Legio 10 threatening Segobriga, Athalaric and the Solitude intervene, and after a forced march they reach the settlement ahead of the Romans. At Alispo, I upgrade the farmstead to Tier 2 fields that have excellent food production given the local fertility level. Galicia is suffering from a food shortage, and this is a problem I can't fix without either demolishing one of the existing structures or capturing more territory. Liuva ranks up and I give him the second tier Raven skill and the first tier Stag skill, both excellent for province government. Genseric and his men have now taken to eating the bounty of the sea in a fish sauce called garum, which will help sustain them on long naval expeditions. As I end the turn, Friedebald keeps trudging through the Sahara Desert south of Carthage. There is quite a bit of shuffling of the Roman legions here and there, but nothing particularly concerning to the Vandals, except that Legio 10 has gotten the message from the Solitude and subsequently sailed away. However, as winter approaches, we learn that our workforce at Bracara has been sabotaged by a Roman spy. Gisela runs into the same trouble as Gunderic in obtaining the office of judge, although Godegisel intercedes on his behalf, and the promotion goes forward. Godegisel and the Oath move on Pax Augusta, and after eliminating the moderate Roman garrison present, we've now eliminated the Western Roman Empire presence in Iberia entirely. It appears that Hispania has finally taken Brigantium, while Caesar Augusta has been captured by rebels. It seems that some of our Alani brethren have joined our society at Carthaginensis, as we now have access to the Alani cavalry. Athalaric takes the opportunity while in Carthaginensis to replace his Germanic mounted warband units with the more heavily armed and armored Alani horsemen. I think the time is coming soon to move against Hispania, so Hunilla starts moving toward northwestern Iberia to help counter the inevitable provincial instability. I take a moment to repair the damage at Pax Augusta and upgrade the sanitation structure at Alispo with troughs. With this done, I end the turn. Friedebald must have gotten lost in the Sahara Desert, and I can only hope a passing caravan will have rescued him by spring of 407 AD.
The mountain people told me this way was safe from Roman eyes, and now I see the logic of their observation. No Roman or any man should willingly come here. My path has become lost in the sandstorm, and now I seem to be traveling in circles. I have lost much progress pursuing an elusive pool of water that seems to remain several hundred paces in front of me no matter how far I travel. When my horse dies, I shall drink its blood like the holy sacrament of Christ, and I pray to the Father that my faith and fortitude will bring me back from the marches of hell into which I have wandered.
During the end-turn phase, the Iazyges ask for our assistance against the Eastern Roman Empire, but I'm not interested in this war right now since the Eastern Roman Empire is not an enemy I can afford until I've moved well into the Mediterranean. We see the Macedonian king sailing roughly in our direction, a little bit closer than I expected, between Italy and Corellis. He's got a few units short of a full stack, or perhaps playing a few cards short of a full deck, and I don't think this is Alexander the Great we're dealing with here. It seems that I overlooked the public order situation at Alispo, when Godegisel moved out of the province, assuming that Genseric's navy would be sufficient to keep the populace in check. However, the small group of rebels present are not a threat currently, and Godegisel hunts them down.
Getting on our way! Destroy them! Ooh. Move out!
The province instability is relatively low, and the rebellion only occurred due to a single turn penalty from the recent conquest. I've actually got a bigger problem in Bracara due to the food shortage. In the eastern part of the peninsula, Athalaric takes his new Alani cavalry with the Solitude north to Caesar Augusta to try to take it away from the Roman rebels that are running amok right now. They have a fairly impressive garrison for a bunch of rabble-rousers, and the balance bar is not particularly generous, so I fight the battle manually. The weather is dry, suitable for my onager and archers to set the settlement on fire. I look around a bit and try to decide what side of the settlement would be best to deploy on, and I eventually settle on a location that will put my onager close to 3 out of the 5 towers that are present. I put the ranged units on the flanks and the cavalry hideout in a small orchard at the edge of the town. The Germanic hunters spread out and move up toward the tower on the left. The onagers launch a volley of burning pitch that starts a fire that gets out of control quickly, consuming the small wooden guard tower without any more direct damage. I start rolling the onager forward to take care of the tower on the right. The archers finally get into position and start launching flaming arrows at the tower on the left, although it's taking them quite a few arrows to accomplish anything. I move the slingers up to harass the Roman spearmen that are guarding the town entrance. Although their stones are relatively ineffective against the Roman armor, the sheer volume of ammunition they are throwing is starting to take its toll on the enemy. Frustrated with the relative ineptitude of his archers at felling the guard tower, crazy Athalaric takes matters into his own hands, running over and barking a string of incomprehensible directions at the onager crew, who do their best to land a few shots against the tower. Although they narrowly miss twice, they manage to set another fire that consumes the structure. The defenders at the avenue leading into the city have evidently had enough of my slingers, and the slingers are running low on ammunition anyway, so it's time to move them back. The Alani horsemen have circled around the right side to take an alternate path into the city, while the Germanic warband axe units are converging on the main avenue guarded by the Protectores Domestici. My Alani horsemen crash into the sword and shield-wielding unit guarding the other avenue, although it seems they've been lured into a trap, as cavalry units appear from around the corner and flank my horsemen. I move in a second unit of horsemen to see if I can get the better of one of the cavalry units who charged in, although things are not going well, so I pull the cavalry out. The Alani horsemen retreat behind the Germanic spearmen, who are now moving down the small avenue on the right, and they should be able to drive off the enemy cavalry or make short work of them. Athalaric and his bodyguard, along with the Germanic warband units, are demolishing the Roman infantry in the main avenue, and the Roman units panic and break, retreating further into the city. We've also managed to break the Roman spears blocking our way to the cavalry, and our Germanic spearmen push forward into the vulnerable Roman horsemen, who are already starting to waver. Athalaric and the axe units are closing quickly on the enemy's flank. I send the cavalry circling around to deal with the crossbows and the enemy onager crew. With the enemy ranged units broken, we start moving in on the rear of the remaining cavalry units, and one of my Alani cavalry gets a solid charge on the enemy general, who is sitting back near the town square. The entire enemy force is wavering now, and I'm just waiting for their morale to fail completely. I'm not disappointed, and in a few seconds the enemy general and the remainder of his forces are shattered and driven off, killed or captured. I get the opportunity to rank up Athalaric after the battle, and I choose both tiers of the Stag skill, since that will give him to the authority attribute threshold of 6 required to increase the size of his passive general aura that provides a morale bonus to nearby Vandal units. During the intern phase, Macedonia backs off a bit, off the eastern coast of Rhegium. Firmus Macer, the Roman spy, is at it again in Bracara, but this time his efforts are unsuccessful. Hethan moves into Bracara and attempts to have the man killed, although he succeeds only in wounding him. Godegisel adds a few of the Alani cavalry at Alispo. I start converting the Civitas at Bracara to a burg. It's costly but still significantly cheaper with Hethan present. Genseric and the Larch and Prow sail into the port of Tingis, and I decided not to assault this turn given the substantial enemy garrison fleet, and just set up a blockade for now.
Set up a blockade! Pass!
Scarillo has a couple more skill points to distribute, as does Hethan. She gets the Conviction and Instigation skills, and he acquires Corruption and Civilian Infiltration. Radagaisus also has a couple of new skill points as well, and he gets the Hunter and Judge skills. Friedebald was apparently able to make his way out of the desert and now moves east to the small Roman-held settlement of Sabrata. During the intern phase, the mayhem has made its way into the mid-portion of the Italian peninsula, and the Ostrogoths now have Ravenna under siege, while the Caledonians are besieging Rome itself. Macedonia turns tail and runs back to the Balkan Peninsula. We've completed the Civil Development's mission, successfully finishing up the Manor Lands research, and we're given a new objective in the Call to Arms mission, which gives us 5 turns to raise an army. My economy is in reasonable shape, and there are a couple of directions I'd like to push in, north to Hispania and south to the African coast, so I think raising an army sounds like a fine idea. I want to take advantage of our temporary civil research bonus, as we're now at a 142% research rate for civil technologies. I decided to try to finish off the first 2 tiers of civic technologies, starting with craft specialization, and probably moving on to exchange of expertise next time. There are small bonuses faction-wide to public order and sanitation for completing the first and second civic research tiers, respectively. Hethan moves back to Lusitania, and I upgrade the pasture to a livestock herd, convert the weaponsmith to a toolmaker, and also upgrade the pasture at Carthaginensis to a livestock herd. I raise a new army at his palace. It seems that Athanaric survived the smallpox outbreak at Malika, in spite of being quarantined with the infected, so I think he would make an excellent lunatic to run headlong at our enemies. He's obviously of strong constitution, possessing the second wind ability, but his ordeal with the smallpox has evidently left him with somewhat addled brains, as he has the irresolute trait, which is cancelling out the benefit of his fearless warrior skill. I equip him with pancration gloves and a pilum, which supposedly gives +3 experience for recruits. But it seems these items are broken, or perhaps the meaning of the +3 is not what I thought. We'll see this next turn. Friedabald scouts a bit further south. During the intern phase, Illyria asks for my help against the Roxolanians, who are far to the east in Transcarpathia. I agree to help them since Illyria proved a valuable ally much earlier in the campaign, and they continue to pressure the Western Roman Empire.
Glory awaits you. You have chosen one.
Firmus Masser is back, now at Malika, and this time he deceives Scarillo, which shuts down her Inspire Populace ability. Genseric and Athalaric both welcome new children to the family. We also get a notification of a good omen at Emerita Augusta, supposedly glimpsed by a traveler in the wilderness. Word of this will provide a bonus to the public order in the province. Athanaric starts to recruit some units for his new army, the Rivers of Blood. As I alluded to earlier, the equipment bonuses seem not to be helping, as the units come out only as single bronze chevron veterans, not silver chevron or rank 4 as I'd hoped. I think this means the equipment is not working properly, but I'm not sure. Genseric is still blockading at Tingis. I could probably take the settlement, but I'd like to wait a couple more turns so Athanaric can cross the Strait of Gibraltar as a suitable force to spearhead the assault into Africa. Friedabald starts making his way toward Carthage and catches a glimpse of Legio X, who are off the coast at Sabrata.
I could do more. I could be of...
The public order at Lusitania is finally resolved to the point that I can begin taxing the province again, and it provides a very nice boost to the economy. During the intern phase, we are now forced to choose sides. The Franks have attacked the Saxons, and we must choose one or the other or else lose both allies. Given our history of conflict with the Franks, cooperation with the Saxons, and the fact that the Franks are the aggressors, I think it's most reasonable to side with the Saxons in this instance. The conflict is a bit far away, so the Franks may destroy the Saxons anyway, but I'll fight against the Franks if given the opportunity. If nothing else, the Saxon bloodline will live on through Giselic's heirs with the Saxon Princess Gogifu. The Venetians ask for peace, and I'm able to squeeze about 1,000 extra wealth out of them, but I grant their request. The Maurians have very cleverly assaulted Tingis while Genseric was blockading the port, forcing him to effectively aid them in taking the province. I could have tried to fight the battle manually and inflict some friendly fire on my allies, but I decided it wasn't worth the trouble, so I just have Genseric participate in the auto-resolve. The Maurians then reinforce the settlement with another large army, so this will turn out to be an even tougher settlement to take. Firmus Masser has once again covertly deceived Scarillo at Malika, such that she's unable to use her ability. Genseric, Redigasus, and Athanaric all run into trouble in obtaining their political offices. Redigasus is able to call in a few favors, although probably not from Vizimar, while Godegisel intervenes on behalf of Genseric and Athanaric. I continue building my armies, adding more infantry to the Rivers of Blood, and hiring Alani horsemen for the Children of the Forest. Hethan has moved into Bedica, giving a good opportunity to do some construction. I upgrade the granary at Cordoba and start building a village and a farmstead at Hispalis. Friedebald finally arrives at Carthage, finding it a relatively poorly developed settlement, with a small garrison and a depleted Roman legion. There is also a Gaetulian force sitting across the adjacent coastline, and the Macedonian king is lurking in the area too. We could perhaps lend our assistance to the Romans by better defending it from the African tribes with a Vandal force. Hispania once again asks to be admitted to our defensive alliance. I decline, and I think Godegisel is basically fed up with their entreaties at this point.
The new moon and an enemy in the old.
Firmus Masser is relentless in his harassment of our forces in southern Iberia, this time misdirecting the Rivers of Blood, although this can't have been difficult given the mental state of their commander. Hethan attempts to assassinate the enemy agent, but his plan is undone. Friedebald is successful in his attempt to ruin the enemy food stores at Carthage.
Succeeding is what I do best.
For whatever reason, Liuva seeks to defame the honor of Mata, Genseric's wife, but Godegisel isn't having any of it. Indulf obtains the office of Elder, although he's only ever been Godegisel's sometime retainer. My plans to move against the Roman settlement at Tingis foiled, Genseric moves back to Carthago Nova where he can keep improving his navy. I go ahead and swap out the mercenary artillery ships for our own units, and also add some Greek-fire Dromenarians to the mix. I think if we can enhance our marines, this will be a very potent force. With the ingratiating Gratianus grating on his nerves for the last time, Godegisel gives in to his choleric predisposition and declares war on Hispania, moving directly to assault Brigantium.
The legion cower before us. No escape.
The auto-resolve bar looks about even, but I'm not impressed. I think Godegisel can feed this small army and the town garrison to his war dogs for breakfast and they will still have room for lunch, but we'll have to manually fight the battle to make it happen. Godegisel takes a page out of Visimar's book, assaulting the city from the opposite side of the direction of his army's advance, lining up on the northern edge of the settlement at dawn. I line up the onager a bit inland to target the two nearest defensive towers, the Germanic hunters on the left, and the right flank held by the Alani horsemen, with our Germanic spearmen again providing the backbone of the force in the middle. As the battle commences, the naval garrison, which probably represents the strongest part of the town defense, moves to the docks inside the city. The onager crew target the tower directly in front, while the Germanic hunters start knocking arrows to take care of the one on the left. With a substantial fire started at the base of the middle tower, the onager crews shift their aim to the one on the right. The archers move up to harass the enemy spears at the settlement entrance, and the onager has rapidly eliminated both of the towers on this side of the settlement, now shifting their fire to the densely packed enemy regiments inside the city. Godegisel sends 2 units of spearmen circling around toward the western edge of the city to counter the enemy cavalry there. As the enemy naval marines move out in front to counter our Germanic hunters, the Sarmatian spears let loose with their war dogs. Settlement damage, war dogs, a hail of arrows, and a barrage of burning pitch are causing the enemy morale at the settlement entrance to drop precipitously. So I start moving the infantry in to see if I can capitalize on the panic. The bowman marines waver and break, and the Sarmatian dogs tear them apart as they flee. Our infantry units move in to close with the enemy on both the northeastern and northern fronts, while the Alani cavalry circle around to the western coastal edge of the settlement. So far, things seem to be going well, although there's still a large number of enemy troops in the settlement. The enemy scout equites decide they want nothing to do with our Germanic spearmen, so they retreat further into the city, so the spears line up blocking the northern exit. The Alani cavalry commit themselves to a charge on a unit of Legio swordsmen, and once broken they pull back to the settlement edge under fire from enemy archers. The Hispania regiments on the eastern side of the settlement are holding up remarkably well, against several units of spearmen and axes, with Godegisel himself joining the fight there. The Germanic hunters set fire to more of the settlement and rain down fire arrows on the third tower in the southeastern corner of the city. I split the Alani cavalry at this point, sending one unit smashing into a unit of Legio on the coastal edge of the city, and another careening into the marines who have engaged our spearmen. The third unit pursues a unit of archers along the coast. The archers withdraw incredibly quickly, making it all the way to the last standing defensive tower in the city. The Marines facing our infantry and the other Alani cavalry unit at the northern entrance to the city are all wavering and look set to break at any moment, but they keep coming back to the fight. Finally, with a charge from the cavalry, one of the units of Marines is shattered. My cavalry at the southern edge of the settlement have eliminated one of the archer units, but have taken fairly substantial casualties as they are harassed by the other 2 archer units and the tower. The cavalry split, and each of them tackles one of the remaining archer units. But unfortunately, one of the Alani cavalry regiments is intercepted by the enemy admiral, Servius Bassus, who makes quick work of them with his retinue's swords and javelins. The other Alani unit makes it to the town square, and they assault Servius Bassus as well, but they too are repelled and subsequently routed, as they are unable to pull off an effective charge. The last unit of Alani cavalry struggles with the remaining unit of naval bowmen a bit longer, when finally Godegisel breaks through the enemy lines on the northeastern edge of the settlement, breaking both units of enemy swordsmen and precipitating a mass rout among the enemy troops. Only Servius Bassus maintains his composure, although even his bodyguard begin to waver and quake in fear as the Vandal force closes in. Within seconds, his men have given up and they flee in terror before the approaching Germanic warband.
The day is yours! Is that all?
We had quite a few losses, over 800 men, but still it was a decisive victory and a reasonable outcome under the circumstances. Hispania has seen fit to convert to our religion, Arian Christianity, but that will not save them from us. Visomar moves up to help garrison the defense of Brigantium. The Thalaric and the Solitude move up to the border of Pompaleo, but there are 2 full stacks of Hispania troops present, so he moves back to the relative safety of Caesar Augusta, where he recruits 2 units of Sarmatian spears and a unit of light Moorish cavalry. I do some work to repair Brigantium, which is badly damaged, but that's most of my funds for the turn. Both Hethen and Fredibal have been uncovered by Romans, so Fredibal may need to retreat from Carthage. The Oath have earned additional traditions, so I add the Hunter skill, which will improve our archer recruits' experience, and improve the Epic Camp following tradition to 2nd tier, which lowers the upkeep cost for the army further. We'll have to see next time what the Hispania response is, how much, if any, fight the Western Roman Empire has in it, and whether the Macedonian king sailing around in circles in the Mediterranean will ever get his bearings. Thanks for watching, and join me next time for another episode of March to the Sea.